I feel like inversions don't get the love they deserve. Like, whenever people talk about coasters, it's always airtime. Airtime, 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 and that's another thing. Why do people always compare airtime to inversions? Like, they're two completely separate things. Airtime is a force, it's a sensation on your body, while inversions are a doorway to getting those forces. Inversions can have hang time, laterals, positive Gs, and yes, even airtime, albeit upside down. But the thing is, inversions have kind of fallen from their former glory. Inversions used to be the hottest thing on coasters. They're things that all coasters needed, but nowadays it seems like people enjoy coasters without inversions than ones with. But seriously, why do people love airtime so much? Like, I like it, but come on, I think it's a little overhyped. I've asked people whether or not they'd axe all other forces off of coasters or get rid of airtime. And you know what some people have said? Some people say they'd rather keep airtime and get rid of everything else. They need therapy. Like, seriously, can you imagine if the only thing on coasters was airtime? People already have an issue with Skyrush for this very reason. They say the layout is just airtime, hill, turn, airtime, hill, turn, airtime, hill, turn. And while I could try to make an argument why this is actually a well-sequenced coaster, that's not the point. The point is, if everything was only about airtime, people would hate airtime. But that's exactly what happened with inversions. Back in the day, I say it like I was born, when inversions were first introduced, they were the hot new item. Corkscrews were going up everywhere, Schwarzkopf was the juggernaut of industry, and airtime was nowhere to be seen. People were just happy with loopers because this was such a new concept. And you know what? It makes sense, right? The same thing happened with launches when they were first introduced. People just want what's in, and that's totally fine. Companies like Schwarzkopf were at the top of their game, making these iconic, super intense vertical loops. You had Aero leading the way with their custom loopers and corkscrew models that went up like they were freaking going out of style. It was a different time. It really was. This was probably the golden age of inversions. Like, if I could pinpoint a time period where inversions were at their peak, this would be it. Right now, we're in the golden age of ejector airtime. That was the golden age for inversions. New types of inversions were coming out, different sizes, different locations, different models. So you might be saying, Coast Tunes, inversions were popping off. What do you mean the fall of inversions? Get that clickbait out of my face. And you know what? You're right, it was a bit of clickbait. But here's the thing, inversions never died. Like, they never took an absence in the industry. Actually, quite the opposite happened. Inversions became oversaturated. See, these inversions were all great for their time, but that's exactly what they were. For their time. There was a long stretch of time where the same inversions just kept popping up everywhere, and I think that's really what killed inversions for people. There are so many coasters with the same elements in just different orders that it makes inversions look like these cookie cutter elements that you just copy and paste when you're too lazy to think of something else. But that's not what they should be. The best inversions are the unique ones. They're the ones that feel crafted specifically for that ride. Look at Flying Dinosaur. Come on, could you really see this on any other ride? Imagine how ridiculous that would look on an RMC or friggin' dive coaster or something. Look at Zadras, Zero-G stall. Could you see that in anything else? I mean, on an inverted coaster, it's literally an airtime hill. This is a sign of a good inversion, something that's specific to the ride. Double loops on Schwarzkopf coasters. Can you imagine that to be in them? That would be so stupid. Look at the shape of them. Look at the way it flows with the rest of the ride, complementing all the other elements. The best inversions work best specifically with their coasters, or at least their models. Like, could you imagine a Raven turn on any other coaster besides a 4D coaster? How would that even work? And this is how companies are starting to operate now. I think they've realized inversions shouldn't be these things you throw in for the sake of throwing in. They should be sprinkled in there for a little bit of variety. I mean, look at some inversions on the coasters we're getting next year. A lot of the time, it's the most hyped part of the ride. Velocicoaster, you either got the Heartline roll or the Zero-G stall. Pantheon, the stall. I mean, the Outer Bank looks good, but come on, get with the program here. Iron Claws is a bit more of a toss-up. You either got that first Outer Bank or the Death Roll. For me, it's gonna be the Death Roll. I just think it looks more fun going down that big of a drop while inverting, but it could go either way. When inversions are done like this, oh, it's just so good. They were sprinkled in there to switch things up, and by doing it, they stand out. Unfortunately, that is not how inversions were for a long time. Inversions went from this unique novelty on some coasters to literally everywhere for so long. Aero started it with their mega loopers, but I don't actually think these are so bad. While they did use the same elements over and over again, I think it was okay because for the time it was just a new concept. Whenever a new concept is introduced, yeah, it's gonna explode into the market without much creativity. It is the creativity. The market for inversions hadn't been saturated yet, so parks were eating this up. That's like if we said now, I don't like RMCs because they have similar elements to each other. Well, no, the elements are good. That's why we like them. I'm sure as time goes on and Intamin and B&M and RMC continue to make these RMC-inspired elements, they're going to get stale and will want something new. But for right now, they're fine, and that's what inversions were. Inversions were cutting edge at the time, and they were the craze. So Aero putting them in a lot of coasters was alright. I think the era that killed inversions was after Aero. As much as I hate to say this, I think B&M killed inversions. Whoa, wait, hold up. No, I don't hate B&M. No, I don't think their loopers are bad. And yes, I do like some of the inversions like the zero G rolls or the pretzel loops, but I just think that for a lot of people, and almost myself included, they just kind of ruined inversions, and that kind of sucks. B&M loopers are everywhere. Like if you go to a big chain park, chances are they have a B&M looper. It also doesn't help that a lot of these loopers are clones. These loopers really do inversions dirty because a lot of these inversions just kind of suck. I mean, they don't suck, but they're what I like to call filler elements. They don't really do anything. They're just kind of there to, you know, be there. They're like that one guy at the party in the corner with like I was going somewhere with this, I swear. But these inversions left a lot of people with a bad taste in their mouth. They're just really boring. They remind me of stale bread. But for some reason, these loopers just kept popping up everywhere. I would do that gun sound effect for every park that gets one, but it would just end up sounding like this.
Say hello to my little friend.
But really, these things were everywhere. And it sucks because they weren't even like horrible rides. They were just bland and forgettable in the grand scheme of things. Like, I want to hate these so bad, but I just can't because they're not terrible. If these things were like a friggin' Zamperla or Volair, then yeah, I would have probably burned down a couple of them by now. But they're not inherently terrible. They're just too popular. And I think that's what made them effective in killing inversions. Because like, they're not bad. You know this isn't what a bad inversion looks like. So you just think this is what inversions are. Just these boring copy and paste elements. But that's not what they're supposed to be. Can you imagine if we replaced every single one of these B&M loopers with a B&M hyper? Bro, people would hate floater. I mean, we already see this on a smaller scale with B&M hypers now, because people now are just like ejector, 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 because those hypers are everywhere and people got bored of floater. If there was only one floorless or one invert or like one wing coaster, bro, people will go crazy about that shit. But since we have so many of them, since they're just everywhere, it's kind of become hard to really enjoy any inversions without thinking about those friggin' stale bread inversions. Because there's probably one in the same park. Another thing that contributes to this oversaturation were the clones. Oh my god. I don't think anyone's ever noticed this before, but like every single clone coasters relies on inversions to carry the ride. Vekoma SLCs, Batman the Rides, Boomerangs, they're all inversion-based rides. And aside from Batman, these are not good inversions. Whereas before we just had very mediocre versions, these are just borderline horrible. But the fact of the matter is these cloned rides were everywhere, and they were just more mediocre or bad inversions for people to have to sit through. I mean, even now with newer clones, we're seeing inversions play a big role of them. Mock Rides is friggin' going back and putting an inversion in the Power Splash. And it makes sense. Inversions are marketable. You're like, whoa, we're going upside down on a water ride? What? But this is just going to be another clone that has inversions in it. Another clone that people are going to have to keep getting on over and over again at different parks and experiencing the same stale, boring thing. However, I do think we're having a bit of an inversions renaissance. Like, they're not totally canceled. A lot of my examples of inversions done well were on recent coasters. RMC does them really well. Like, they sprinkle them in to mix up of the forces, but they never make them the main draw of the ride. They can be the highlight of the ride, but it's never supposed to be the main appeal. And because of the RMC effect, now Intamin and Vekoma are doing the same thing. Maybe other manufacturers will catch on to this, like S&S or maybe B&M. I just can't wait for inversions to be these beloved things again, because I love it when they're done well. And come on, deep down, you know a good inversion is just like, mwah. I hope manufacturers keep putting inversions in the right way, you know, where it's like not the main focus. I mean, you can have it be the main focus, but then they have to be good inversions, just not bland elements, because that is what killed it off. I don't know. You tell me in the comments below. What do you think? What do you think about inversions? Do you like them more than Airtime, or do you not like them because of the loopers? And do you like what RMC and Vekoma are doing with them? I've been Costumes. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and I will see you next time.